Okay, good afternoon, dear students. I hope you can hear me.
Good afternoon, ma'am.
Good afternoon,
Good
ma'am.
afternoon, very good afternoon. Okay, so in the last class, we have discussed about the object modeling technique, which was proposed by three different people, and we saw what are the advantages of those models, and a few were having drawback also. And before ending the class, we saw how a class can be represented and what are the various symbols used in it. Okay, now today we'll be discussing about association, multiple inheritance, metadata, meta modeling, and state modeling. These topics we would be discussing today, and we'll see what are the important things which we should know about these models, like the state modeling and meta modeling. Okay, so I'll just start with association, then followed by multiple inheritance, and then meta model. So usually we use association to represent a static relationship between classes. So how this relationship is represented in a pictorial form. Okay, so it represents static relationship between classes. And when we draw its diagram, when we make classes and make association between them, so it is always like this: a rectangular box which represents a class, and as we are saying that it represents the relationship between the classes. So let's there be a class name. I said that class name would be always in bold and it would be in the center. In the last class I taught you the class name, and here we'll have attributes and the functions. So let's say we have some attributes, operations, and responsibility. The same way, attributes, operations, and responsibility. Okay, now these two have a static relationship. Okay, now whenever we show a relation between two classes, that to a static relationship, which is called as association. So it is usually like this: arrow, added, and here the association, that is the relationship name, would be written. Okay, so that means we'll always write association name, and that would define. Okay, so we have to remember that we place association name above the line. Always remember this: name above or on the line, association line. Some times you may see that association is written below the line also, so there is no problem. But according to the rule, mainly we usually write it above, but if it is written below also, then it's okay, no problem for that. And we always used a filled arrow to indicate the direction of the relationship. So here we use filled arrow to indicate direction of the relationship. Okay, now let's take an example. It would make us clear. As I said, it is written above and on. I'll add one more thing. It can be written below also, because if you'll see diagrams where it is written below, you'll be confused. Okay, now let us, we have a two class for example, and let's see how we can write an association, a relationship between them. Okay, they are connected by association link. Now let us talk about a professor. Okay, there is a class called professor, and that professor has written few books. Okay, so we have to make classes of professor and book. Now, what is the relation between them, the static relation between them? If I have to show the association, so we can say that a professor has written this book. Okay, so the association would be wrote, and the direction would be like this, filled arrow directing towards the book. Now I have written it above the line, I can write it on the line, and I can write it here below the line also. Okay, so that would be correct, no problem for that. Now, who is professor? How professor is related to this book? So, professor is an author. Okay, so author, author. Okay, and this book can be related to some subject. So I can write subject, or let me write a textbook. Okay, so these are the roles which we have written. Author is a role of this professor. Author is having a role here right now, and this book is a textbook which is specifically related to a subject. Okay, so thus we represent association, that is a static relation between two classes. Now, moving ahead, let's see what is multiple inheritance and how we represent it diagrammatically. Multiple inheritance. Okay, in the second class, I guess I have already discussed about the various inheritance, single inheritance, multiple inheritance, and all. So, this multiple inheritance is one of the topic in our syllabus which we have to cover. Okay, so in this also we have several types that we'll see. That is just, we have disjoint classes in multiple inheritance and overlapping classes. We'll see after discussing about this. Okay, so what is inheritance? Basically, we share the properties of the parent class, and we can call that super classes also. Okay, so in the multiple inheritance, what happens? A class can have more than one parent. Okay, or it may be inheriting features from all the parents, means all the super classes, means it can have one or more than one super classes. Okay, and in this and we have the class which is being derived can be a mixture of two or more classes, where it may be sharing properties and uh, functions. Okay, so the advantage of multiple inheritance is greater power in specifying classes and an increased opportunity for reuse, means inheritance permit us to reuse the properties of the parent or the base class. Okay, but one of the disadvantages that we lose the concept, how conceptual and implement uh, simplicity is lost in multiple inheritance. Why implementation simplicity is lost? Because while implementing the complex, the structure becomes very complex, because as the classes are being derived from two or more sources or more than one super classes. So in such situation, what happens when so many mixing of things is taking place? So to implement it becomes little difficult for a programmer or a coder. So in such situations, it has one of the disadvantage that implementation is not so simple. Means it becomes complex for a coder. Okay. Now, so as I said in the starting that we have two types of classes and multiple inheritance. That is the we have disjoint classes and overlapping classes. Okay, so what are these and how they are related to multiple inheritance? Let's see that. So I'll just write a definition that it permits a class to have superclass and to inherit features from all parents. Okay, so let's see what are disjoint classes and multiple inheritance. Okay, so first I'll make an diagram so that it becomes easy for us. Okay, so what is the meaning of disjoint classes? Okay, so we can say that classes are said to be disjoint when there is no instance that belong to both of these classes at a time. Okay, so when there is no instance which belongs to both the classes at a particular time. Okay, but uh, okay, So I'll just make that, suppose we are having a class of, suppose maybe full-time employee. Okay, full-time employee, and there is a one more class where we have part-time employee. Okay, these two classes are not related to each other, but they would be um, a class, or we can say as a class called employee. Okay, so we can say that these two classes are disjoint because they don't share anything, but at the end they belongs to a class, that is employee. Okay, why? Because I employee can be a full-time employee at a time or a part-time. This single person cannot play both the roles. Okay, so that way we can say the instance of these classes cannot occur at the same time. Okay, at the same time I'll make one more class, like for example manager. Okay, manager can be an employee, and for example there is one more category who, maybe an individual who is not playing the role of manager but is helping in managing some other things like resources, the attendance and everything. So I'll just name it as an individual contributor. Okay, so an employee can be a manager at a single time or can be an individual contributor, cannot play both the roles at the same times. Okay, so these are called disjoint classes. Now, um, okay, now from this we can say that when the our classes, they cannot have a same instance of a time and they cannot play a role, but they, it happened that they belongs to a sub base class. Okay, but they don't have, some, means it cannot be carried at the same time, means they are employee of particular organization, they will have some ideas and all, but employee can be a full time at a single instance of a time, or he can be a part time at the same time. I employee can be a manager or an individual contributor. He cannot play both the rules at the same time. So these are called disjoint classes in the multiple inheritance. Now there is one more thing in multiple inheritance, that is we call overlapping classes. Overlapping classes. Now what are these? These would be cleared in an diagram. Okay, let's take an example of vehicle. Okay, in the previous class also I have talked about land vehicle and water vehicle. Okay, so if we have a land vehicle and if we have water vehicle, if we talk about, now what would be the categories which would fall under this? It may have car, bike, okay, and so many things. And land vehicle may be having, which can be used on the land as well as can be used in the water. Okay, they will have both the mixed property, both the properties. Okay, so we can call them as amphibious vehicles. Amphibious vehicle. Okay, this would be called as land vehicle and car vehicle. Now if we talk about water vehicle, the water vehicle can be boat, ship, and so many. Okay, and in that, Amphibious vehicle will also be fall under water vehicle because there would be few vehicles which can be used in water as well as on the land. But if altogether we'll talk about this, they will fall under a class called vehicle. Okay, okay. So this is called when two main classes can be made to have a same base class, that is called overlapping classes. This is called overlapping.
Ma'am,
So overlapping classes में क्या होता है, a class can happen to occur in multiple places. जहाँ पे हम disjoint में बात कर रहे थे ना कि एक class का instance cannot occur at the same times, but overlapping में what would happen that a data sample or an instance can occur from more than one classes, which creates a noise in a data set. Yeah, there was someone who was saying something. ओके, सो दिस इज ओवरलैपिंग एंड डिसजॉइंट. डिसजॉइंट में क्या होगा कि एक टाइम पे एक क्लास का रोल ही प्ले होगा, बट इन द ओवरलैपिंग एट द सेम टाइम इट वुड बी प्लेइंग मल्टीपल रोल्स which would create a noise in the data sets. Okay, such confusions are created. Okay, so that is called overlapping. So these two types of classes exist in multiple inheritance. Now we'll move ahead with metadata. Now metadata, as we all know that metadata is usually a data which describes other data. So it can be stated that a data that describes other data. For example, catalogs, okay, blueprints, and maybe dictionary. Yeah, dictionaries also. So these are the few examples of metadata. So when a model is created, okay, so uh, if a data model is created which defines the metadata, we call it a meta model. Okay, so when a model of a meta model, now in after metadata we have meta modeling. Now, what is this meta modeling? This is the process of generating meta model. Meta model means which defines the data of some other data. Okay, so the model which defines the data of other model is called meta model. So, model of a model is called meta model. We usually call model of a model is meta model. Okay, and the process of generating this meta model is called meta modeling. Okay, and the process of generating Such meta models models are called are called sorry meta modeling. So we can say that this model is an analysis, construction, and development of frames, rules, constraints, and theories applicable. Okay, so if we have to define meta modeling, okay, we know that it is a model of a model. That is a meta model. How meta model is constructed, that is called meta model. So what does it do? What is the use of meta models? How does they help us? So we can say that it is an analysis. It is an analysis, construction, and development of frames. Of frames, rules, and theories applicable. Now, where it can be used, what is the use of meta modeling? Okay, so as a it provides us the structure or a layout or a schema that needs to be exchanged or stored. Okay, so it gives us a structure which defines the need to exchange or store data. Okay, it gives the information about the data. So if we'll talk about the uses, so it gives us a schema or a structure or a layout for data that needs to be exchanged or stored. It also helps in making or defining the mechanism to create tools that work with broad class of models. Okay, so usually this modeling, this meta modeling is done when we need to have a layout, a structure of a data which has to be processed, which has to be stored, exchanged, and at the same time it provides us the mechanism. It helps in creating the tools how work can be performed on a broader range, how the classes of models can be accessed, how the data can be stored or retrieved. So in such situations, meta modeling help us. Okay, it gives us the information, a model of a model which defines how it can it can be processed, or how it can be useful in implementation, how it can be helpful in maintaining the data successfully. Okay, now we have another topic, that is packages. Now, what are these packages which are important in OODM? Okay, now in packages we usually deal with when we want to solve any problem. Okay, so if uh, any sort of problem has occurred in any of the class and we want to solve it, so what we'll be doing, we'll be dividing that class model into parts so that a model can be easily solved. That is packages. So that package usually consists of group of elements like classes, association, and generalization. So these would help us to solve any error or to solve any problem in any class. Okay, so we can say that if any problem has occurred, okay, so we divide the class model, I'll say not class model into parts so that problem can be easily solved. Now, this consists of group of elements. Okay, so we can say that it is a group of elements which helps in solving these tasks. That is classes, association, and generalization. For example, if we talk about compiler, okay, that class model is means a compiler is compiling the class model, so it would be dividing the class diagram, or sorry, not diagram, class model into several packages. Okay, so I'll just take an example so it becomes clear for us, that divide a class model so that a problem can be easily solved. Into packages like, okay, we'll talk about class model of compiler, so we can divide it in lexical analysis, parsing, semantic analysis, and code generation, and optimization. So when we'll divide these into certain packages, so this would help us in analyzing the each package individually. What is the class, how the association is being taken place, what is the generalization there, so we can understand the whole model thoroughly, and at the same time whatever the problem has occurred, that can be removed easily. Okay,
Ma'am, what is the second point?
what is the,
Second point is the
it is a group of elements. Package consists of group of
uh,
elements which has classes, association, and generalization within it. Okay, these elements would help you to analyze what is the reason for that particular problem, and from a class model as a from a model as a whole, how you can overcome or how you can solve that particular problem. Okay, now we'll discuss about state modeling. Why we are discussing about state modeling? Because we have to study about state diagram. So, to before means before starting with state diagram, before starting with making state diagram for different situation, it should be clear in our mind what is state modeling, and state modeling consists of what all things. Okay, so if we have to define state modeling, we can state that the state model describes the states and events in a system using a diagram. Now we'll see how we can represent a state or events in diagrammatical form. Okay, there are different types of events also. So what are these events? If we'll talk about events. So events represents external action. External action, and states represent values of object. Let's study about events in detail. We have how many events? We have a signal event, we have change event, time event. There are three types of events which we'll be studying. So let's start with events then. Events. An event is an occurrence at a point in time. If we have to define event, we can say that an event is an occurrence occurrence at a point in time. Okay. Now, what is this occurrence? We can say that maybe a condition or a situation that has happened in that particular time. So it can be defined as a condition or situation that has occurred or that has happened. That happened. Okay. For example, power Okay, we can say that these are the events which are occurring at point in time. Power turned on. That means an action, external action. As I said here, event is an external action. Okay. That means power has been turned on, the switch has been on. Now alarm set, that means you have taken a watch, you have uh, set an alarm for a particular time. That is called an event, a condition which happens at that particular time. You have said something, or when an alarm bell alarms, okay, you press the button to make it off, you switch it off or just snooze it, okay, that is an external action. Okay, now events are of two types. Now, what is this signal event? Three types, sorry, signal event, change event, and time event. Now, what is this signal event? If we'll be talking about this signal event. Okay, so signal event is, as we are saying, event means external action. Okay, so in this, when there is a one-way transmission of information from one object to another, that is called signal event. Signal means some signal has been sent. Take it like that. Okay, so it can be defined as an, it is an fully one-way transmission of information from one object to another. Now, this signal event can be either a sending signal, okay, it can be a sending signal event, or it can be receiving signal event. Okay, means the transmission of data has occurred only once. Now, what is the difference between signal and a signal event? Okay, if we'll talk about difference between signal and signal event, though signal can be defined as a message. Okay, signal is a message between objects, and while we can say that signal event is an occurrence in time, is an occurrence in time. Let's take an example, then it would be clear. So, in signal transmission, in every signal transmission, there is a unique occurrence, and we have group. We group them into signal classes, and we give each class a name. For example, I'll make a class. Okay, suppose we have a class and class name on the top, as we know. So we have given the name of this class as flight departure. Okay, so in this class we'll have the details about the flight departure. Now Whenever a class is denoted as a signal, or where the signal event, the occurrence, some condition, something is happening, we denote it by like this, two arrows, signal written in between, and like this. Okay, so this is a signal class. Okay, where different information is being transmitted. If we are talking about a flight departure, so we would be talking about the airlines to which the particular flight belongs. That particular flight would have some number, that is flight number, and it would take off from a city. Okay, there would be a city from where it would take off, and there would be a date and time at what time it would take a flight. Okay, so this is a signal class for a particular instant, that is we are talking about flight departure. So we can say that, if I'll be talking to, I'll take an example. So UA flight, I'm talking about a flight that's name is UA flight 123. Okay, that departs from Chicago on January 5th, ठीक है, 9 2021, is an instance of signal class flight departure. Okay, so we have a class flight departure in which in that we have the details about the airlines, the flight number, city, and now one way data transmission. Okay, we are talking about signal event. That means one way data transmission. That means we have the information that this particular flight have taken out from Chicago on January 5 this and this much. Now we don't know about the further information. We don't know how many passengers were there, it took a flight for which city, at what time it landed. No. Okay, just we had the information that it was it took a flight, or we can say that takeoff took place at that particular time or date or from city. Okay, so that is called as signal event. Now we have two more events, that is change event and time event, that I'll tell you in next class. Okay, I'll share this screen with you, these slides with you. So if you have any doubt, you can ask me tomorrow. Okay, so thank you for being in the class. You can leave, and those who are not attending the class, just inform your classmates that all students should have 75% attendance for attending any of the examination. Okay.
Okay, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.